Our first Mad Royals video covered Rudolph II and Emperor Shin. We'll put a link to that video in the description.
In this episode, we're talking about the famous blood countess, Elizabeth Bathory, and the madman who maybe wasn't mad at all, Nebuchadnezzar.
Let's dig into this.
Elizabeth Bathory, the blood countess, holds the Guinness World Record as the most prolific female mass murderer of all time. Many claim she wasn't as bad as everyone said. But let's face it, the woman was bad, and quite mad.
Born into one of the most powerful families in Hungary in 1560, as a child, Elizabeth watched as folks were tortured and killed by her father for crimes. Once a man accused of theft was sewn up inside a horse with only his head exposed and left to die. It wasn't the only gruesome act she would witness.
Elizabeth was quite smart and beautiful. It's possible she had epilepsy. She reportedly suffered from seizures from an early age, and the treatment for epilepsy at the time was to rub blood from a non-epileptic into the extremities of someone having an epileptic episode. This will sound way too familiar in the rest of the story.
Elizabeth also had extreme fits of rage. She became pregnant after dallying with a peasant boy when she was 14 years old and was shut away in her rooms until the child was born and a suitable family could be found to claim it as theirs. Can't have valuable marriage contracts tarnished by loose morals.
At 15, she was married to Ferenc Nadasdy, known as the Black Knight of Hungary for his cruelty on and off the battlefield. What could go wrong there? Ferenc was known to torture his own people and reportedly taught his wife everything he knew about torture devices. He also introduced Elizabeth to the occult and reportedly Satanism.
She took to her new hobbies with gusto. Since her husband was often away fighting, she took numerous young lovers. Mostly men, but occasionally women as well. Her inner circle included a local peasant woman known as a witch, one of her 5 children's nursemaids, and a manservant who was a dwarf. She reportedly loved to watch this man beat her maids with a heavy cudgel.
She also enjoyed watching servants punished with a barbed lash, and having servant girls doused with water and dragged out into the freezing cold where they were left to die. A servant brushing Elizabeth's hair accidentally pulled too hard one day, and Elizabeth's response was to hit her hard enough that blood splashed onto her own face. Reportedly, this is when Elizabeth discovered that blood made her skin look fantastic. Things went downhill quickly from there.
There are stories of girls being put in cages full of sharp spikes that were raised up so Elizabeth could watch as the flesh was torn from their bodies. Girls would be placed on the floor naked so Elizabeth could torture them while servants scooped up the blood. Once when Elizabeth was very ill, a servant girl was brought to her bedside and was held while Elizabeth bit chunks out of her. And of course, there's an accusation of her bathing in a blood-filled tub.
As peasant girls disappeared without a trace, word eventually got out that all was not well at the castle. It took over 3 decades and the deaths of between 650 and 1,000 young girls.
After testimony from 289 witnesses, 2 of Elizabeth's inner circle were sentenced as witches to have their fingers they had dipped in victims' blood pulled out with red-hot pincers before they were burned to death. Her favorite torturer, her dwarf manservant, was decapitated and burned.
Elizabeth was never convicted of any crime, probably due to her family's great influence. They did, however, declare her insane and had her walled in her rooms with only slits for air and to pass food through left open. On the night of August 20th, 1614, she told her bodyguard that her hands were cold. He reportedly said it was nothing and told her to sleep. The next morning she was found dead. She was 54 years old.
And then we have Nebuchadnezzar II, the Mad King of Babylon, and one of the biggest villains of the Bible. Remembered as Nebuchadnezzar the Great, he ruled Babylon from 605 BC until his death in 562 BC, and was one of the most powerful men in the world.
He was the eldest son and heir of the founder of the Babylonian Empire, and commanded an army for his father at a very young age, annihilating his father's enemies, including the mighty Egypt. The guy was good.
When his father died, he returned to Babylon as king and started an aggressive building and restoration program that resulted in beautiful architecture and art that still survives. He was an iron fist type of ruler, having no time for defiance and quick to order torture and execution when it happened.
He spent the first 11 years of his reign at war, conquering cities and leveling them to the ground after plundering their treasures. He once again attacked Egypt, but this time he lost. So he turned his army towards the kingdom of Judea, which had decided to revolt against the Babylonian Empire. And this is where things get sticky.
Judea was destroyed in 586 BC, and the Jews were captured and sent to Babylon. Zedekiah, the king of the Jews, was forced to watch his sons being tortured and murdered before his eyes were gouged out, and he was sent to Babylon and imprisoned.
Nebuchadnezzar's madness is related in a story where he calls on wise men, Daniel, the one from the book of Daniel, and 3 others he had sent to Babylon to interpret a nightmare he has had. When he wouldn't tell them what the dream had been, the men protested. Nebuchadnezzar had them all thrown in a fiery furnace for defying him. Another version of the story claims the men were thrown in the furnace for refusing to worship a golden statue of Nebuchadnezzar himself. Either way, they were protected by God, and they survived.
And then Daniel interpreted another dream, saying if Nebuchadnezzar did not repent and praise the one true God, he would lose his mind and live like an animal for 7 years. Later, as Nebuchadnezzar was praising himself for the wonderful kingdom he had created, God made the prophecy real, turning the king into a cow and sending him into the forest to eat grass. 7 years later, Nebuchadnezzar reportedly converted to Judaism and was restored to his sanity. The psychological diagnosis for this condition is boanthropy, the delusion where a person believes they are a cow. Nebuchadnezzar is the most famous to reportedly have suffered from this condition.
While much of Nebuchadnezzar's madness, including his bout with boanthropy, is argued to be exaggeration written in the book of Daniel, the truth may be that it was all a mistake, with the actions of other kings, including his father, being pinned on him. The clay tablets of the Babylonian Chronicle have confirmed some of Nebuchadnezzar's history, and none of them mention his madness.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching,
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
and we'll see you on the next one.
Hey, here's another Dragon Den video you might like.
And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button.
And you can hit the notification bell if you'd like to know when our videos come out.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.